A former Fort Smith Public Schools janitor has been arrested and charged with raping a minor. Documents from a Kimmons Middle School board meeting show Jackie Freeman resigned from the school for personal reasons in March. Court documents say Freeman was arrested on July 1st, and his DNA sample matched a sample taken from the alleged victim. He's due in court for a hearing this week. Well, some new traction in the wrongful death suit into the ATF raid that ended in the death of former Clinton National Airport Director Brian Malinowski. His widow, Maria Malinowski, sued ATF and at least 10 agents after her husband was shot during a raid at his Little Rock home in 2024. This week, an Arkansas judge issued an order dismissing claims against the individual agents because the ATF was serving a search warrant. Malinowski's wife is still suing the U.S. government under a different law, and that will continue until a judge's final ruling. Well, Huntsville firefighters are sharing new details about the challenges that they faced during a house fire that destroyed a home over the weekend. This fire broke out just before midnight Friday on West Street. By the time firefighters arrived, more than half of the home was already on fire. No one was hurt, though 2 of the family's dogs were killed. The chief, Kevin Shin, says crews had to rely on tanker trucks from 5 or 6 other departments to keep the water flowing.
Without their assistance, without that water supply, we were in a no-win situation even as it was. I think our closest fire hydrant was over 1,400 feet, which is an enormous way to, if we were going to try to do a lay-in, it just wasn't possible.
Shin says the home's multiple additions created overlapping roof lines that also made it difficult for firefighters to reach the flames burning in the attic. As of now, they have not determined a cause for the fire. Well, tonight, Fort Smith city directors will again consider whether voters should decide this November to change the city's form of government. A citizen's petition is trying to get a question on the ballot, changing the government from an administrative to a mayoral form. Directors will consider whether to bypass it and just put it on the ballot themselves. They tried to vote on it in May, but that vote ended in a tie. Also happening tonight, Arcoma City Council is expected to discuss how to move forward with the city's police leadership. Police Chief Michael Ivey and Deputy Chief Mallory Speaks were placed on leave during a special meeting on June 23rd. Councilors said there was a list of grievances against the two, but they did not go into specifics. We'll let you know what happens at the meeting tonight right here on 5 News. The Oklahoma State Attorney General's office has awarded $18 million in grants to state sheriff's offices. It's a program they've been doing for the past 2 years. Now, these funds can be used for things like improving equipment or giving employees stipends. The LaFleur and Sequoia County Sheriff's offices each got $250,000 from this round of grants. Well, Sebastian County and the city of Fort Smith now have officially consolidated their 911 dispatch centers. 5 News reporter Claire Everbach explains what this means for emergency services in the area.
The new River Valley Communications Center is located here, right inside the Fort Smith Police Department. On Monday, Sebastian County and the city of Fort Smith began answering 911 calls from the same room. The consolidation is happening to comply with Arkansas's Public Safety Act of 2019, also known as Act 660, which requires counties to consolidate their 911 dispatch centers to help streamline emergency communication. Before Monday, calls were routed to separate dispatch centers, depending on whether they came from Fort Smith or elsewhere in the county. Officials originally planned to build a new standalone River Valley Communications Center, but after that project lost funding, they instead brought operations together inside the Fort Smith Police Department building. Wes Milam says while the changes will make dispatch more efficient behind the scenes, people who need emergency assistance will not notice a difference.
You call 911, you're going to get the same service no matter what, and I want to make that clear. What I'm trying to do on Monday is that the public will see absolutely no difference when they call for help. It's just the person answering the phone is going to be in a different seat. That's it.
Milam says this consolidation is the first step in improving emergency services across the county. They're now working toward a unified computer-aided dispatch system that's expected in the next 6 months, according to Milam. In Fort Smith, covering news where you live, Claire Everbach, 5 News.
Thank you, Claire. Well, Fayetteville City Council is expected to discuss an ordinance tonight that would restrict the city from signing non-disclosure agreements with businesses. It comes amid public backlash after the city signed several with drone manufacturer Swarm Aero. The city already has changed its rules on signing NDAs, now requiring approval from the mayor and city attorney. A judge also sided with Fayetteville during a lawsuit last month, which claimed the city violated the Freedom of Information Act when it didn't provide a resident with an NDA that was signed with Swarm Aero. Well, Fayetteville Mayor Molly Runn announced the city is changing its parental leave policies. City employees will now be eligible for 6 weeks of paid leave. Federal and state law only requires employers to give unpaid leave for 12 weeks. The mayor says she has wanted to implement paid leave policies in the city since the start of her term.
We recognize that when the city is competing against other cities, against private enterprise, that these types of benefits are what new employees and prospective employees are going to look for. So it also helps us remain competitive.
The policy starts immediately. Employees who have worked 1 year with the city are eligible for that new benefit. Well, the Arkansas Secretary of State is now reviewing signatures for proposed ballot measures for verification. The group Protect Our Rights says they submitted over 108,000 signatures by the deadline on Friday. That group is pushing to get an amendment on the November ballot they say would protect rights to propose ballot measures, collect signatures, and sign petitions. Meanwhile, For Our Kids, a committee aiming to put the Arkansas Educational Rights Amendment on the ballot, announced it did not submit the required number of signatures to qualify. Supporters said the proposed amendment would require equal standards for publicly funded schools. Well, President Trump is in Turkey for a NATO summit with European allies. The president has been highly critical of the defense alliance, and many of the allies there are trying to use the meeting to persuade him of their commitment to defense spending. Nana Saint-Yo-Bonsu has more details from the White House.
President Trump arrived in Turkey for the start of a NATO summit that he said he was inclined to skip, but agreed to attend at the urging of Turkey's president.
From the day we met, we got along.
The president said he's considering authorizing the sale of American-made F-35 fighter jets to Turkey, despite a 2020 law restricting it.
I can tell you many people, including the people sitting right here, thinks, why wouldn't we do that? We have a better relationship with Turkey, and Turkey's been in many ways much more loyal than other countries that we think would be loyal.
The president has long said he doesn't think other NATO countries are contributing enough money, and his anger with European allies escalated after they did not step up and help with the U.S.'s conflict with Iran.
You would think that they'd be very willing to do something to help us.
The president says he's considering withdrawing more U.S. soldiers from Europe.
We've invested trillions of dollars in NATO. Why? To protect European countries and others, Canada, etc., but to protect people, countries from, generally speaking, it used to be the Soviet Union, now it's Russia.
NATO was created to counter the threat from Russia, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he needs NATO weapons to help in their war against Russia.
How to get as quick as possible, as much as possible, missiles for Patriot systems.
Zelensky is set to meet with President Trump tomorrow. Nana Saint-Yo-Bonsu, CBS News, the White House.